Last week was the anniversary of the day of 21 waves. You remember from March last year when I was learning to surf?
Oh, how could I forget?
We actually literally have merchandise commemorating the event, so I know you shouldn't have forgotten.
No.
I actually wasn't able to get out for a surf on the exact day, unfortunately, the anniversary, but I was out a few days before and after, and I'm not sure I've progressed that much in a year, to be honest. I think that was in some ways the climax. I feel like
You peaked.
I peaked on the day of 21 waves, but that's because I've become a bit more hungry for quality. You know, I want a good wave, and I let other waves go that would be fun and perfectly acceptable, but I just sort of hold off. And I don't know. In some ways, I come away a bit unsatisfied. Like, I should have just caught some of those fun waves, you know, rather than.
You're waiting for that 50-year storm.
Brody believes the 50-year storm is coming next year.
50-year storm. What's that?
That's kind of a legend.
No, it's real. It's absolutely real.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I've become a bit choosy and a bit of a purist, and it'll be my undoing, I'm sure.
All right, then, come on then. I know you want to ask me.
Well, not unrelated to surf culture, you've been dropping hints to me that you've got a tattoo.
I've been inked.
Whoa. In what universe are we where Brady has got a tattoo? I mean, really, this is just of all the what's going on? Why? How?
Remember episode 15, one of your podcast ideas was called My Tattoo, and you talked about how people love talking about their tattoos? I'm now that guy.
Right. Okay. So
no, to be fair, I'm not really. I don't show it to people or talk about it. Like, it's not something I'm like is a big deal, but it has happened, yes.
A legit tattoo. Okay. So you sent me a message saying, I'm here at a tattoo parlor for real. Like, and when you say for real, I know for real. Like, you know, you're not mucking around. But
yeah,
it's happened. What have you got a big KFC Tim across your back? Is that what's going on?
Did I actually not show you it or not? I can't
No. I have no idea I have no idea which scientific symbol or physics little doobie or element from the periodic tables or moon or space junk algorithm or piece of calculus you have decided to.
It's a Nick Cave lyric.
Is it that long one that I read out last time?
Yeah. It's your money for nothing waveform that I put on the t-shirt.
That would be commitment. Yes.
Yeah. No. Do you want me to show it to you?
I do.
All right, here we go. I don't know if it'll be reversed on your camera or not, but here it is.
Oh man, they put it on backwards. What now? Now what is that? Is that the Meta sign, like the Facebook company?
It is the first initial of my son.
Oh right, lovely. An E. Is it an E in some? It's just a straight English E, like just on the angle you've got it. It's not like it's a.
It's actually in the handwriting of my late father-in-law. So my wife found an E that my late father-in-law had written, who never got to meet, obviously, his grandson.
Yeah.
And she has one on her wrist, and I have the exact same one on my wrist.
Nice.
Mm.
Nice. That's great. That's fantastic. So you're linking 3 generations there with a little bit of ink.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a nice way to put it. So yeah, it was like, it was just something, I don't know. I'm that guy, I'm that like, you know, new enthusiastic dad who's had a child late in life and like has all the photo shoots now and gets the tattoo and does all the stuff. I'm like just a big walking cliche.
Yeah, well, you're not a walking cliche, but well, yes, you are that guy. You are certainly. It is awesome to see you indulging in all this stuff and so joyful about it. That's brilliant. I'm really, really, really enjoying that. I did not expect you to get a tattoo, of all people. Oh,
I'm hardcore.
Let me put it like this. If I got a tattoo, and I've thought about getting a tattoo over the years, but I could never really nail down exactly what to get. I like your idea. But the first thought that would come to mind is, oh, hell, what's Brady going to say about this? What eye roll am I going to get from my good friend?
I've lost the high ground.
You have, yes. There we go. Any regrets?
No.
Do you regret it yet or at all? No?
No.
Okay.
Every time I look down at it, it warms my heart, and I hope it always makes me think of him. Like it's No regrets at all, because it's very subtle, and it's also kind of abstract. You know, you can't exactly tell what it is because it's quite curvy and loopy, and so it's got it's kind of nebulous, and I like that about it. It's not like, you know, it's not like a date.
Yeah.
And it's not like a full name, and it's not like a picture of something. I like that it's a little bit abstract. Yeah, nebulous is what I like about it. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. It's not too literal. It's got a bit of playfulness in it.
E is a very famous number in mathematics as well. So some people probably will think it's some geeky E, but it's not. It's for the boy.
It's a little bit that though, isn't it, man? Like really.
Although E's not a lot of people in maths love E. I'm more of a pi man. I think E doesn't do it for me.
And E is what? Is that right? Energy? Is that what E is in?
No, it's another thing. It's another mathematical thing. It's about, I think is it 2.7 E? I think they chose E for Euler. Yeah, it's 2.71828. It's one of those numbers that goes forever. It's Euler's number, who is a famous mathematician, so they gave it E. But it's a lot to do with natural growth and nature. It's often also associated with like interest and compound interest and stuff like that. It's a natural number to do with growth. Very, very significant in mathematics. Like as significant, if not more significant than like pi. It's that kind of status.
So like the John 3:16 of the science world is E equals mc squared. What's the E in that?
E equals that is energy. Yes.
That is well. There you go.
That's different though. But yeah,
what do you mean? It's
completely unrelated, and that is not a number. E, that's that can be any number. It's the amount of energy. So what that means is the M is mass. If you had a bit of mass, like if you had like a piece of cheese,
yep,
and you were able to convert that into pure energy, which is very hard to do, but like nuclear bombs can convert mass into energy. If you were able to convert that into pure energy, which is a very hard thing to do, the amount of energy you would get out of that piece of mass is the mass multiplied by c squared, and c squared is the speed of light squared, which is a massive number. It's how fast light goes times by itself. So c squared's a massive number. So the amount of mass, the amount of energy you get from a piece of mass is massive because you've got to multiply it by this massive number. And that's why in an atomic bomb, you turn just a tiny little bit of mass into pure energy using nuclear fusion or fission. Just a tiny bit of that mass of that bomb gets turned into energy, but it's a massive, massive amount of energy, which is why atomic bombs are so powerful, because the conversion rate between mass and energy, like the exchange rate between mass and energy, is a massive, massive number. So the amount of energy equals the amount of mass times the speed of light squared, times a massive number.
How did Einstein come up with that? Like, it must have been just a theory. That's right. It's not like he's sitting in a chemistry lab and going, all right, well, let me try.
No, he didn't like guess or think, oh, what would the number be? Speed of light squared would be a good number. It fell out of other physics.
If people want to know more about this area of science, there's a wonderful Australian movie called Young Einstein from the 1980s, which explains it all perfectly. It's absolutely brilliant.
Don't you want to know any more about my tattoo?
No, I don't. I want to get back. Let me ask the question that everyone wants to ask. Like, did it hurt?
No, like a tiny, tiny little scratch. I mean, it's a tiny tattoo, to be fair, but it was just like a tiny, tiny scratch, if that. No, I wouldn't even call it pain.
Not as bad as a blood test, for instance, like a needle.
Similar to having an injection or taking blood, but probably less, but for longer. I only had 5 needles being used. They have different fittings they put on the end of the bzz device. It can be like 3 needle, 5 needle, 10 needle, like depending on how thick you want your lines to be. I had a 5 needle because it's quite a fine line.
Oh, it's like when you have a shave. Do you want a number 5 or a number 2 or something like that? It's like a different
kind of like that, but
needle.
It's the actual number of needles that are pricking into you at a time.
Oh, wow!
So as the pen, it's like the head. They put different heads on the pen, and the head on my pen had 5 needles going tick 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 into me at a time.
So it's like when you get those 4 pens that we love. Those 4 pens, and then if you unscrew the blue bit, and then you've got those just the actual 4 inside. Bits, and just like jabbing that into your arm.
Yeah. Did you, like that.
Is that what he used? Did he use one of them, or did you have to have all the same colour?
It was a lady tattooist.
Ooh. Oh, that's nice. I like that. That makes the whole experience a lot more classy, I reckon.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it wasn't like a biker with a big beard or something at the back of a petrol station or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very delicate and artistic. Yes.
How was there a lot of the moment between I'm going to get this? Did you walk in and say, "Oh, I'd like to have a tattoo with this," or did you go in and go, "Oh, I want a tattoo," and then you finally came up with this concept, and then you were like, "Yes, no, yes, no, yes."
The tattoo appointment had been booked months in advance, so we knew like the day, and then, but it was only a few days before we totally zeroed in on exactly. We both knew we were going to get the E.
Yeah.
And my wife had decided on her father's handwriting. She thought I might go for a different E, but in the few days before we went, I thought, no, I want the same as yours. I want them to match, you know.
Yep.
So
Yep. And is that sort of, would it fit underneath a 5-cent piece? Oh, that's an Australian term, but would it fit under a minty? Or?
I would say you want a 10-cent piece. A 5-cent might just cover it. A 10-cent definitely would.
Australian 10-cent pieces being the universal size that everyone uses.
It's smaller than a quarter.
Right, yes.
For our American friends. And it's just below where my watch would sit, closer to my elbow.
Oh, yes, you can actually see it. That's a good thing.
So when I'm wearing a watch, you still see it.
And it's black?
Yeah, black. Fine black line. So now, of course, whenever we watch TV shows, and like we're watching like this dating show at the moment, and like whenever there's a person who's got lots of tattoos and they say, "Oh, I want someone with tattoos as well," I always sort of turn to my wife now and go, "Yeah, someone like me."
Is this the start of it spreading? Are there going to be more tattoos?
I don't know. I was warned that it can become addictive, and once you get one, you want more. And literally, as I walked out and walking down the street, I said, "Oh, I'd like another one actually." Like I can imagine it becomes. I can imagine you get into it. I'm not going to be like, that dude, but I could get another little one somewhere maybe. I quite liked it.
Like on your neck, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know about that. The thing is, like, all my life, my main opposition to tattoos has always been like they're kind of permanent, and which is, I guess, in itself is not true because you can get them removed, but they're kind of permanent and they're like a blemish on your body and stuff like that. But I think I've gotten to an age now where I realise like none of that matters. Like,
no, it doesn't. No,
we've just got this old crappy old banged up body, and what does it matter? Get a tattoo. Who cares? Like, look at the rest of my body. Like.
Well, also, I remember an age where, like, I got a pretty significant scar on my finger from procedure years ago, and it moves. Your first thought is, oh, will there be a scar? To like, oh, cool, I've got a scar. Like, it actually becomes like that's part of me and my story and my body, and it's unique. And
yeah. So
what? That's great. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't get rid of it if I could, because it's like, no, I remember the moments. I remember being in hospital. I remember stories attached to it, and. Yeah. There's a podcast idea, though, to get a tattoo, to do a podcast while you're getting a tattoo. Not just talking about your tattoos, but while it's happening, it's like, oh, how's that feeling? And I can see this, and that you can be talking to the person. Oh, this is turning out well, or is it hurting? And then why are you getting it?
It would be cool if it was the same person every episode, like, and they just got more and more tattooed as the podcast went along.
That's a cool idea. Yeah.
So this person became like a living memorial to their podcast, all their podcast episodes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Speaking of immortal moments in the history of me, you may or may not remember my tennis shot of the century.
How could I forget your tennis shot of the century?
No, how could you forget? I will not let you forget.
Don't tell me you've had that tattooed onto your back.
No, but my local tennis club is having its tennis courts resurfaced, and part of the process involved ripping up the old synthetic grass surface on which I played shot of the century on court 1.
Oh, gosh, what a shame. Lost.
Well, you'd think so. So I went along on the day it was being ripped up, and I went to the place where the shot happened, where the shot landed, I asked them to cut out that piece of court for me to keep. Because you know how when like famous stadiums close, people like keep bits of the turf or they keep the seats and things like that as souvenirs for the fans. Well, I didn't want this piece of court to be lost forever, so I've kept a piece of the court about the size. How big a piece is it? I'd say it's about the size of 2 or 3 placemats, maybe a bit bigger. It's got the green and the white line right where near the ball landed. So obviously I could have it framed or kept. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it. It's sitting in my front yard at the moment, much to my wife's displeasure.
Well, it's just out in the rain. That's how it's spent the last 10 years. So it's
fine. Yeah, it's fine to get rained on. Yeah.
That's funny.
So obviously I want to keep a bit for myself for posterity. But I'm thinking maybe of having it cut into pieces and seeing if anyone else wants pieces, like as mementos.
Is there like an international tennis museum somewhere in Florida or Wimbledon or somewhere?
There must be something. There must be something. I thought maybe just like, just fans of the podcast and tennis in general might want a piece of this. So if anyone's got any ideas what I should do with it, I could like cut it up into tiny squares, or I could like keep it big. I don't really know what to do with it. I'll put a picture of it in the notes and people can have a look and tell me if they have any ideas. What should I do with this piece of court? There might be some idea I haven't thought of yet.
So they didn't want to take it and sort of ingrain it into the new surface, like as a sort of a handover legacy. You know how you do that with lawn? You sort of go, oh, that's good lawn. Let's put that lawn over with this lawn so that it grows and spreads, and they didn't want to do that to pass the legacy on.
That doesn't happen really with synthetic grass, so it wasn't really an option. But
spiritually, it happens, surely. Like,
yeah. I got some very funny looks from the guys who were ripping it up when I asked them to cut me out a piece. But anyway,
I wonder if after you left, they were like, "Oh, this must be really special," and took a piece home for themselves. Of course, it wasn't the sacred ground where the ball bounced, but still, it was near.
Yeah. Parish notices, lots and lots of comments and feedback and things have been coming in from people. I do read it all. I love it. Keep it coming, people. I can't read it all out on the show, of course, but I'd like to read a few things. Lame superpowers, which was one of our ideas.
Yes.
Was that the last episode? I think it was the last episode. Eric Larson, who is the cartoonist from Savage Dragon, who immortalized us in the Savage Dragon comic book.
Legend.
Comic book.
Oh, yes.
Not cartoon, comic book. Eric, who is a colonel. I believe we bestowed a colonelship on him for that. I can't remember.
We must have. Must have. I've still got that up on my fridge. It's amazing. I just love it as an image.
It's one of my proudest moments. Anyway, needless to say, the useless superpowers bit was one that I actually did in my comic book, Savage Dragon, some years ago. The lamest was likely Wood Boy, who could turn any kind of wood into any other kind of wood. It's a cool
I know a lot of guys that would love that, going, oh, this is pine, or now it's oak. Oh, you know what I mean? They can have that conversation in the shed.
But it is lame.
I love it.
Espen from Norway suggested the milkman. He knows exactly when the milk is the perfect temperature for the baby without having to drip it onto his wrist. Or possibly it knows exactly how much milk the baby is going to drink, so they don't have to measure up too much or too little milk. The milkman.
That's handy.
Espen has a new baby as well, I believe. So this was on his mind. This was interesting. Cameron from Canada wrote, "Dear Tim and Brady, I think I may actually have a terrible superpower. I have recently been learning to meditate. I cannot float yet, but I am able to stop the hiccups at will. I don't know if this is an ability everyone possesses or if this is really my superpower, but by concentrating on my breathing, I can stop my hiccups immediately. After doing this for about 30 seconds, they're gone for good. This can be convenient when I'm alone, but with company pausing everything so I can concentrate for 30 seconds, it's more awkward than hiccuping. I'd be very interested to learn if any listeners can replicate this. I simply put all my focus into counting my in and out breaths until I reach 10, then I go back to 1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think being able to stop hiccups in 30 seconds is particularly impressive, but I am interested to hear how other people deal with hiccups and if they can stop them themselves. This is like, one of life's great conundrums. Can you stop hiccups?
I think it's super impressive. Just being able to stop it at will is phenomenal. I would like that superpower. Yeah, I would love it.
I can stop my hiccups. I know how to do it, and I do it in a similar way. What Cameron's doing is how you stop. The key to stopping hiccups is to concentrate very intently on something else. So the way I stop hiccups is if I'm having a hiccup attack, I get my two pointer fingers. My two index fingers from my two different hands, and I look at them really, really closely, and I try to get them really, really close together without them touching. How close can I get them where I can still just see the tiniest gap between them? How close can you get your fingers without touching? Really, really, really close, but don't touch. Really close. So there's just the tiniest speck of light between them. And after you've concentrated on doing that for about 15 or 20 seconds, your hiccups are normally gone.
Wow.
Because you've been concentrating on something else so much.
Do you close one eye or have you got two eyes open, focused?
I usually do it with two eyes open.
Oh, that's interesting.
What do you do when you get a hiccup attack?
I hold my breath. I do that big
Right.
and just sit there with my heart beating too fast, my face going red for about 4 or 5 minutes. And then, and then I pass out and then they're gone.
Again, though, you're concentrating on something else. Very, very diverting.
I thought it was because it's about the amount of air in your lungs and stuff, and your lung. You're trying to moderate the amount of air, so you need to hold your breath to stop it.
I don't know. But if there's one thing I do know, it's that people are going to have something to say about this. So go to our subreddit or send us an email, unmadefm@gmail.com.
That's right.
How do you deal with hiccups?
For any kids listening out there, I don't hold my breath for 4 or 5 minutes. That's not true, so don't try that at home. It's very dangerous.
I had a really fun WhatsApp exchange with my brother-in-law, Darren, about superpowers. One of his suggestions was Superman, who can deliver your evening snack anywhere at any time. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's Superman?
Just whatever you feel like. Cravings Man or something. That would be the supplement as well going.
And then I came up with the idea of a superhero called Control Z, whose superpower is he can undo the last one thing he did.
Oh, brilliant. Yes.
But only one step back. He can only undo the last thing he did.
Yeah. He can't go all the way back. I love it. It's just,
Yeah.
Do you reckon he'd get stuck in a moment? You know, that he'd just do something and then, no. And then try it, no. And then try it again, no. And then try it, no. You get a tattoo over and over and over again and then wipe it off. No, let's go again.
Yeah.
That's a classic.
It'd be great in like playing cricket.
It would be better. That's true. Maybe that's you got your shot. You've been going for your shot time and again. And then after a million years in the metaverse, you've allowed this one to land.
I asked people to tell us about sounds they make while listening to the podcast.
Ah, yeah, right.
Do you even remember our recordings? I said that and you looked at me like totally blankly. Do you not remember? We discussed...
What do you mean?
Like when you're listening to the Unmade podcast, like, you know, involuntary sounds you may make, like a chuckle or something.
Yeah. You ask people to call in with them. Yeah, I understand. Did I sound surprised?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's an interesting idea. I did hit me fresh, but I do remember you talking about it, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I feel like I'm podcasting with a goldfish with you, but...
Have you ever thought about getting a tattoo?
Sometimes the day after the podcast, I messaged him about something that happened on the show that's just like burned in my memory, and it takes me about 10 minutes to jog his memory as to what I'm talking about. Dave said, in reference to reaction sounds, I had an unfortunate one last evening. While rocking my son to sleep, we often listen softly to podcasts, primarily Unmade, for a bit of white noise. He'd been asleep not even 5 minutes when Brady said Old MacDonald had a fax machine, and I couldn't contain the muffled laughter. Needless to say, it took another 10 minutes to get him back to sleep, although I thoroughly enjoyed the episode. Jesse said, hi guys, I've been a fan since the premiere of episode 1. For obvious reasons, I find Tim's rendition of Money for Nothing really funny. So every time it plays, I find myself singing along to it in a loud, sarcastic way. One time, I thought I was home alone and was doing some chores around the house while listening to the podcast on my headphones. And so, like usual, I started loudly singing along to Money for Nothing. And that's when my wife walked around the corner and gave me a look unlike any other. We awkwardly locked eyes for a moment, and she said, what are you listening to? I just said, it's kind of a long story. That's kind of a Hugh Grant in, what's the film? Love Actually.
Oh, yes.
When he's dancing around as a Prime Minister. I think that's one of those moments.
That's right, the tea lady comes in. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Mary, I've been thinking. Can we move the Japanese ambassador to 4 o'clock tomorrow?
Certainly, sir.
But I like this one. I did ask for people to send in their sounds. The only person who did so far is Kelly. Dear Brady and Tim, I have a weird laugh that often bubbles out while I'm listening to the podcast at work. My co-workers say I sound like a hiccuping dolphin. How appropriate. I've listened to some particularly funny bits to capture the noise. Feel free to use it on the podcast if you so desire. Do you want to hear what Kelly sounds like when she's laughing at the Unmade podcast?
I do. Yes, a hiccuping dolphin. That's a classic. It's like a little. There's a little yap inside it as well. It's like maybe a little puppy that's stuck inside a dolphin, perhaps.
That's kind of cute, I think.
Thank you for sending that in. That's lovely.
Well done, Kelly. All right. Do you have an idea for a podcast?
I do actually. Yes, I've been doing a bit of flying just recently, back and forward, and of course at airports these days. As in the old days too, but especially these days, you get stuck in long lines, queues. And particularly the other day I had this experience where, there's the queue that sort of folds back on itself. So you sort of weave back and forward and all that. And when you're in a long line like that, waiting to go through the security checkpoint, you pass people who are going the opposite direction right next to you. And you are looking forward, so you see them and they notice and you lock eyes. And the other day I locked eyes and smiled with this lovely lady. The trouble is it's not just a passing hello, because in a few minutes I'm going the other way and she's coming back the other way. So you have to see the same strangers again, which was awkward the second time. Like the second time it was a briefer smile. And then the third time we're deliberately looking in opposite directions just to avoid the moment of becoming closer and closer friends. So there's all these little intricacies and little moments in being in a long line, a long queue. And I wondered about a podcast actually that exists entirely in one long queue. And this podcast would be called, wait for it, Q&A. Do you like that?
I like the name. So I think you're on the brink of a really good idea here. You've given me a good idea. What actually is your idea, though? I want to see what you think the idea is.
I think the idea is that you're making a podcast while you're in one queue. So it starts when the queue starts and it ends when the queue ends, or it's in the midst of it. It's like, how long have we been here now? And you're describing the queue and how long you're there, and you're interviewing other people in the line of the queue and just talking about why you're all lined up. Now, at an airport, that's pretty diverse because people are all going in different places. But I'm thinking about also people, like in the old days, remember we used to queue up for concert tickets? So everyone in the line was like a massive fan of Oasis or whoever. And so you just talk about the band the whole time and don't broach other subjects. But Q&A, that's my idea.
I mean, the name is fantastic, first, obviously. And the idea is really good. I'm not quite sure it's how I do it. I think my idea might be more the host, the star of the show, like you, if it was you, it would be the person you were standing next to in the queue that day. So 3 days ago, it was the person you were standing next to at Adelaide Airport. Tomorrow, it's the guy you met queuing for the ATM. The next day, it's so it's just the various people you meet in queues. I don't know about one podcast set in, I don't know. I didn't quite understand what your idea was, but I love the idea of just who did I meet in a queue this week?
Another way, that's a good idea too. My idea is, if you're in a queue, you sometimes just get talking to another person in the queue. And you might have a long conversation with one person, and it's the only time you're ever going to know them, really. And the only thing you have in common is that you're standing on the same bit of turf next to each other for an hour or whatever. Yeah. That's the podcast, a conversation with someone, and you're in the queue, why you're in the queue, all that stuff.
I think maybe the idea is what I thought it should be then. Yeah, but like, so this latest episode would have been that lady. Next week, it might be the guy you meet, queuing for a hamburger.
In a different queue.
Yeah. And that's and just it's just interviews with strangers, but the mechanism for choosing the stranger is who I stood next to in a queue this week.
That's right.
That's your shtick. Yeah.
But I like the idea of it being present. Like, here we are in a queue, and let's talk about why are you in the queue? You know what I mean? Like, where are you going? And, all that kind of stuff. And it looks like we're moving up now. And, there's, there we go. There's all these little wonderful little intricacies. It's its own little universe in a queue about where you should stand and how you walk and all that kind of stuff.
Love it. Love it. Great idea. Great name. Do it.
It's amazing.
Man. Get that made. Such a good... I'm astounded. You haven't had an idea that good for years.
And the name's good. I'm particularly proud of the name. I love the name.
The name's great.
Yeah. I was trying to play with something along a line, like whose line is it anyway, or it's your line now, or something like
Walk
that.
the line.
Walk the line, yeah. But no, Q&A is good. It's funny how when you're in a long queue, and I think you would do this even more than me, for sure, because you do a lot more flying, and internationally, and those queues are longer, is how the people around you become really familiar to you. Like they become, like, oh, there's that guy. And then you see them later on. Like the other day, I came through into the airport and I was sitting there having a coffee. My flight was delayed, so it took a bit longer. Another guy came and sat down at the table next to me. We didn't chat, but you just sit there for 45 minutes and I was reading a novel and you'd look up and there he is again. So he becomes like a familiar face to me. And he was wearing his glasses up on his head. Like most people put their sunglasses up. This guy had his reading glasses up on his head. Yeah. And so later on in the plane, I looked 3 seats forward and there were the glasses on his head. I was like, oh, there's my guy again. And then like 3 days later, I flew home again and I'm walking to get my bag and suddenly he's walking next to me and he's got his glasses on his head again. I'm like, whoa, it's like we've been away on a trip together. Like we don't even know each other's names.
I was going to say the great circle of life is if you see someone checking in and then you see them at the other end at luggage claim. It's like, oh my God, like we've done this whole journey together and you're still here. But you've taken that a step further. You even saw him on the return flight.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing, yeah. And it's like, oh, I feel like I want to say, back again, home, here we go. Like we're all part of one big village or something. It was really funny.
What's the longest queue you've ever been in?
Oh, that's a good question. It may be something as boring as a concert ticket, which would be something like for U2. I waited like 2 hours because you get there at 5 a.m. or 6, Not counting queues where, like, if you're at the airport and you're allowed to go sit down somewhere because your flight's delayed, that's not – it's strictly you're in a line, but this has got to be a standing up experience. You've got to be in a queue. I can't think of one longer than that. What about you?
I was once in a very long one arriving at San Francisco Airport waiting to go through customs. It was very long. I remember being in a really long one to get on a bus to go to a music concert in Japan, like a music festival. You got off the train, they then took you on a coach to I remember that being quite long, a long wait.
Some of those, remember the old days with university, how we had to sign up for our classes in person? And it was just lines all day, like orientation day at uni, and you're just lining up and lining up and lining up.
That.
And so, but the funny thing about that is that you got talking to people around you, because it was first year of university, it's like you're excited to be there. And the people I was standing next to in line at one point, they became the people I hung out with for the next year. Like it's like a fantastic way just to meet people because...
Was that guy with the glasses there?
No, he was there. Can I just say, it'd be funny to know where he was at the time. Like imagine if you could have a map that doesn't just track, you know how we have on our phones now, where you Find My Phone or some sort of thing that can track where you've been, where you're driving and GPS.
Yeah.
What if you could have that for the last like 30 years of your life with someone else and compare and go, oh, me and this guy who I don't know, we've been in Adelaide and sometimes we've been in the same checkout, the same store. Sometimes we're on the other side of the world.
Or even better, like with your wife. Like, was there ever a time you were like within a few meters of your wife years before you met her?
Yes. See, 5 minutes before I met my wife, I was sitting in a lecture room wondering, I wonder who I'll marry and I wonder where she is now. I literally was looking out the window thinking that because I assume I'll get married, I guess, and I assume she's somewhere. I wonder where she is. And then my wife came in and sat down in front of me and, obviously there was all the dating bit and all the other stuff from there. Yeah. But she was just outside the lecture room, like walking towards the lecture room at that moment. That would be amazing to just track that you meet at that point. Did we ever meet at another point or were we so close?
All right, Tim, it's time for a sponsorship message from Hover. I've got a bit of a game for you today.
Oh, I love a game.
So Hover obviously are the domain registrars you should go to. Go to hover.com/unmade. Check them out. If you need to register a domain for anything, a project you're working on, a business thing, a personal thing, Hover is a fantastic interface, not only for, buying and registering them, but also managing them, diverting them, attaching them to a website, putting them on hold for a while, diverting them to your social media, whatever you want. I mean, we always talk about how great Hover is. People should have the message by now, I hope.
They should. They should. If not, go right back to the beginning and listen to them all again.
Yes, you could go on a Hover advert marathon.
That's
It would
right.
be fantastic.
And Hoverthon. Nice.
And you'd probably do really well in this quiz if you have. Because, Tim, I have here a bunch of Hover like suffixes, like, the dot whatever,
Yeah.
that you can register. Because they've got them all, like they've got, I don't know how many they've got. They've got a lot of them. And I'm going to go through a list of them. And I want you to tell me whether or not you think this is a real one that you can register on Hover, or it's one that I've made up.
Right.
Okay. So let's start with an easy one. .com.
I don't believe you came up with that. I believe that exists. Do you want me to say true or false? Or do you want me to say real or not real?
Go true. True or false? Can you register .com on Hover?
True.
True. .business.
It's a longer word, but I'm going to say true.
Correct. .tattoo.
This is one of those, I don't think so, but because Hover have so much, I'm going to go yes, true.
Correct. .church.
.church, I know they do. Yes.
I know you would know. Yes. True. What about this one? .god.
Oh, I wonder if you can do... I'm going to have to say yes. I mean, come on. Yes, true.
No. I don't
Wow.
think you can get .god.
Wow, there are limits to Hover, but it's a pretty... you have to say, it's not a small limit.
high
It's a
bar.
pretty big limit. It's a high bar.
.cricket.
I assume yes, and the name cricket isn't owned by anyone. Presumably, it's a game generically. I would say yes. .cricket.
Correct. True. .rodeo.
They're crazy if they don't. Surely. Yes, true.
True. Yep. .circus.
Well, I can't see why not, unless they haven't thought of it. But Hover have thought of everything, so yes, true.
Hover don't have that power. Like it has to be like approved by some higher authority to become a domain suffix.
Are they the same? Do you reckon it's the same people that approve racehorse names? You know how you have to submit names to name your racehorse, and
.circus is a false. What about .pig?
No, I don't know. False.
Correct. What about .pizza?
Yes, I think that would be a true.
It is true. You can get .pizza on Hover. .Black Friday.
I will say true. I think that would be a highly valued one and a relatively recent one. So I'm going to say true.
Correct. You can get So you could get Tim Hine .Black Friday on Hover if you wanted. How about .surfer?
Yeah, I can't see why not. Maybe they might have .surf for surf shops and surf weather and so forth, but surfer, I'm going to say no.
Correct. You're right. They don't have .surfer, but they do have .surf. You clever boy.
Yes, man
You
of the
clever
oceans.
boy.
Woo!
In fact, I'm pretty sure I've registered 21waves.surf.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah, it diverts to the t-shirt. But what about .easter?
I'm going to say no.
Correct. You cannot get .easter. What about .christmas?
Well, I'll say no for that too, in the same logic.
You can get .christmas.
Oh, okay.
Hover's got it. People, go to hover.com/unmade and find out what ones you can get and what ones you can't. And get the ones you want. They got loads of good ones. And you'll get 10% off your first purchase if you use that /unmade. Hover.com/unmade.
Fantastic. That's interesting. That is interesting. Remember back in the old days, there was only .com.au in Australia, wasn't it? You had to only do the long Australian one for a while.
Times have changed. Times have changed, man.
Those were the days where everyone still printed http // there was a lot of backslashing going on in the early days of the internet.
And now it's time for a segment everyone's been waiting for. Today we have
Dune of the week. Classic.
Dune of the Week. Because, there are a lot of great sand dunes around the world.
There are.
And we like talking about them. And today we're talking about the daddy of all sand dunes. We're talking about Duna Federico Curbis, the biggest, tallest, highest sand dune in the whole world.
Is this in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I wasn't going to ask you to guess the country, but that is a good idea. Can you guess the country? Saudi Arabia sounds like it would be a good guess. Namibia would also be a good guess. There's a lot of big sand dunes in Namibia, as Dune of the Week fans would know.
Say the name again, because that might give me a clue, actually, to the...
Okay. Duna Federico Curbis.
Oh, that sounds like one of those things that scientists have named. You know, they got sort of a Latin tinge to them, so it could be anywhere, really.
Yeah. Well, this is in Argentina.
Oh, right, okay.
In the Catamarca province of Argentina. It's extremely high. It's 4,035 feet high. That's 1,230 meters. That's from its base to the top. It's actually already very high to start with. It's actually 2,845 meters above sea level. That's 9,334 feet. So this is high.
How do you get all the sand up there from the beach? That's a long way up.
I don't know. It's a lot of buckets, I would imagine. To give you an idea how big this sand dune is. Oh, by the way, why is it called Duna Federico Curbis? It's named after Federico Curbis, who was a journalist who figured out how high it was. It had never been officially measured. And I think this journalist, who was an Argentinian travel writer and promoted a lot of amazing places around Argentina, I think he campaigned to get this thing measured because obviously he was familiar with it. And it looks incredible. It's massive. And he had it measured and it was confirmed as the biggest sand dune in the world.
The journalist who went up a sand dune and came down a mountain.
Exactly. To give you some idea how big this thing is, there are 53 countries in the world that don't have a mountain or a piece of land higher than this one sand dune.
Oh, wow, golly.
It's almost as high as the highest point in all of the UK, which is a mountain in Scotland called Ben Nevis. It's just 100 metres shorter than that.
And there's no castle. It's not like there's a sand castle on top that's like cheating. It's just the dune itself.
No, because it's not wet enough. It's too dry to build a sand castle. The sand castle would just fall apart.
But why doesn't the dune just fall apart then? You know what I mean? Like if it's so dry and then, you know how sand, you walk down a sand dune and everything just goes everywhere. Why doesn't everything just go everywhere with this? Why doesn't it just flatten out?
I don't know. I don't know why sand dunes stay in place the way they do. I think it's to do with prevailing winds and things like that. This is a rolling dune, so I think it does move a bit. You get these stationary dunes and rolling dunes, and I think this one is a rolling dune. But I don't know why it's so tall for so long. I don't know. As you can tell, this is my first dune of the week.
There was a lot of I don't knows in there. That's more I don't knows than I've heard in the entire time I've known you. That's
I know what you're thinking though, Tim. You're thinking, why isn't Cerro Blanco in Peru the tallest sand dune in the world? That sand dune that is so popular with sandboarders and is another one of the monsters of the world. And the problem here is, although that is a very tall sand dune, it is actually based, and it's over 2,000 meters above sea level. It actually has a rocky base of 1,300 meters, so a lot of it is rock, and the sandy part is only 780 meters. Yeah. So that's not all sand dune. That's cheating a bit. So that's why Cerro Blanco isn't in there.
Do you like sand dunes? Do you like playing in sand dunes, or do you like find them annoying and hot and awkward to run in and stuff?
When I was a kid, I loved them. I loved the little Sahara out on Kangaroo Island, which is a little patch of sand dunes in the middle of Kangaroo Island, just off the coast of South Australia, rolling down those sand dunes. One of the funnest days of my life.
That's a fun activity. And there's that it's the one safe place to do like a giant leap. You know, it's like you're jumping off a cliff and you just hang for a minute, but then it's okay to land because you sort of crash and your feet go in. Feels dangerous and exciting.
I think now as a slightly older, grumpier man, I would probably enjoy playing in sand dunes less than when I was a youngster.
Oh, interesting.
But certainly as a youngster. I remember playing in sand dunes, but I don't remember having like my underpants full of sand or my shoes full of sand, but I'm sure they were. And I don't think I would enjoy that so much now.
No, indeed. Kind of learnt to drive a little bit on the sand dunes, on the beach and then into the dunes and so forth with a friend's four-wheel drive. So I feel I have, and we used to do fun things like be on the back of the truck and it'd go over a sand dune and it was, you'd suddenly find yourself bang on the other side of the tray. And that was a lot of fun back then as well. Yeah. Dangerous. Again, kids, don't go driving four-wheel drives.
We were able to tolerate a lot more pain when we were young, I find.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yes.
And risk.
My wife talks about the fact that when they grew up at the beach and stuff like that. So sand dunes are just as another name for toilet. Like instead of walking all the way back to the house, you just go up in the dunes,
Go in the dunes. Nice. This is the time in the podcast where we give a few prizes away to our Patreon supporters, our stakeholders who make this show possible. We're so grateful to you. Your names are listed on our wall of fame on the website, and we couldn't make the podcast without you. So
legends, yes.
And we try to give you bonus stuff and make things worthwhile on the website. If you've never been, go to patreon.com/unmadefm. There's a link in the notes. Please join us. It's not just about prizes. We also put little bits of bonus stuff there and try to make things a bit special there.
That's where we put the good ideas and the funny stuff. Stuff that doesn't go to air on the main.
Yeah, that's the good stuff. Not the dross you're listening to now. So we are sending an Unmade podcast official souvenir spoon to Jed T from New South Wales.
Jed
T. We have a lot of Australian winners today. You're about to discover for some reason. I don't know. It's a random thing.
Awesome.
Unmade podcast Spoon of the Week collector cards. We're sending some to Isaac L from Western Australia.
Congratulations, Isaac.
And Hayden R from South Australia.
Oh, congratulations, Hayden.
Oh, you probably know Hayden. I always imagine our South Australian listeners are people from your church.
You've just been away from Adelaide so long, you now think everyone in Adelaide knows each other. But apart from the guy at the airport with the glasses on his head, I don't know many people. No.
Maybe that is Hayden R. I don't know.
Maybe that's it. Hayden R with the spectacles. Nice.
Here's an interesting one. We're sending a Sofa Shop mixtape to Vladimir P.
Vladimir P. From Adelaide? From South Australia?
No, from Seattle.
Ah, right. Vladimir
and it's not
Seattle.
That Vladimir P. I haven't said his surname, but it's not that P. It's a different surname. Vladimir P. from Seattle. Tape coming your way. And last but not least, we're going to send out... have you received these yet, by the way? I sent you some, Tim, some of our Unmade podcast pads for shopping lists and to-do lists and things like that.
Yes, I have. Yes, they're in the rotation. They're being used on the counter. So thank you. Yes, very much appreciated.
Did you like it?
Very much so. Yeah, they're very classy. Yeah. I like them.
Well, you didn't thank me or get in touch or anything.
Oh, didn't I? I thought
No.
Okay. Didn't I take a photo? I took a photo and sent it to a bunch of other people like, hey, cool, look at this. But I didn't send it to you. I paid your thanks forward, man. I paid it forward.
All right. Well, there are a few still left, so we're going to give some of those away to Patreon supporters as well. And the first one to receive one will be Jamie B. from Texas. So Jamie B. from Texas, keep an eye on the post in the next few weeks or month or so, and you will be receiving an Unmade podcast notepad, which you can rip off pages and use for like shopping lists and to-do lists or whatever else you choose to do with it. I use them here on my desk all the time now just to jot down notes and things. So
cool.
Coming your
Nice.
way. I think all that's left is a quick idea from me.
Oh, you thought you'd get away with it.
I can't believe it because today you've had a way better idea than me. I didn't bring one of my A-list ideas thinking I'd still be all right. And then you brought such a good idea, so you're going to outdo me.
Why you sound so surprised to be saying that?
I'm shocked.
Goodness gracious. Sometimes I think you forget you're the sidekick here, man. And
I don't forget that. My idea for a podcast is called I Met Your Hero. And this is where two people come on the show and one person tells the other person about the time they met their hero.
Oh, that's great.
Because
Yeah.
this happens to me all the time. I was at the tennis club the other day and I was with there were 4 of us sitting around having a coffee after a game of tennis, and I was telling them how much I love the Apollo moon missions and how obsessed I am with space and that.
Yeah.
And the other 3 people at the table with me had all met Neil Armstrong.
No. That's awesome.
And proceeded to tell me the 3 different stories about the times they met Neil Armstrong. They had all met my hero.
That's fantastic. I love it.
And I think it would be quite a fun podcast to have someone who has a hero they've never met interrogate their friend or someone else they know that has met their hero.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's wonderful. This is a little bit like when you met and interviewed Radiohead all those years ago. And
This is the other incident that sprung to my mind. That would be, I could tell you all about when I interviewed Radiohead, because I know you quite like Radiohead and they don't mean much to me.
A little bit. I didn't meet him, but then remember we had that guy that's walked on the moon, Duke, who came to our
Charlie
church.
Duke, yeah, you met Charlie Duke. Yeah.
Yep, and I just remember saying...
I've never spoken to a moonwalker.
Wow, not even Michael Jackson?
No, I didn't speak to him either.
Well, I just happened to have him here with me. Yeah. I just remember thinking, oh, well, here's a guy who's walked on the moon. That's pretty cool. He's talking at our church. I had no real concept at the time that there's, only 8 people or something that have walked on the moon?
12 walked on the moon, although nowhere near that many are still alive. So, yeah, because Charlie Duke is quite religious and he became quite into evangelism afterwards, didn't he? And he just came and spoke at a church you were at, did he?
Yeah. We haven't had anyone at Malvern. That would be my aim now. I'm going to get someone who's walked on the moon to come and preach at Malvern. It's the last thing I do. Even if I have to go and convert them personally.
I would be jealous.
This is a good idea. Because there's all that fun tension and like frustration about the person asking about what they said and did. It would be like a reverse interview in a way, wouldn't it? Like,
yeah.
Tell me what they said and why didn't you ask this and all that.
So I'm trying to think who. I mean, you've met a few of your heroes, obviously. I know you've met Nick Cave recently, as we talked about not long ago. You briefly met Bono.
I briefly met Bono. We didn't have a chat.
Who's left? Who would you really want to meet? Who can I try and meet to make you jealous?
Oh, like who's still alive? That's a really good point.
Who's the person I could meet that would most infuriate you?
That's a really good point. I'm going to pause longer than you will probably want the pause to last on the actual episode.
I mean, I guess you'd be upset if, like, God or Jesus did like a burning bush and chose me.
I would be thrilled. No, I pray for that every day. What if do you know what I think would be awesome? Is one day you woke up and there were letters on either side of the E on your tattoo and it was just spelt Jesus now. It just burnt itself like a stigmata apparition overnight. That would be awesome. I'm trying to think if there's I think here's a fun one, right? When I was a kid, like, I really, really loved John Bon Jovi, and I've had lots and lots of dreams where I'm like, meet John Bon Jovi, and I love Bon Jovi, and I've been on stage with him in my dreams, and I remember waking up going, oh, that was a great dream. So even though he's well down the list now, it's more of a nostalgic rock, I would actually like to meet John Bon Jovi just because the younger me would just thought he was just amazing. And I still think I have a bit of a preference for tighter jeans than I probably should be wearing because of John Bon Jovi, like in my mind, like that's what he's always worn. And I think that's stayed with me ever since the 1980s. So it would be fun to meet John Bon Jovi. That would be cool.
Now I'm thinking, can I title this podcast episode A Preference for Tight Jeans?
A preference for tight jeans. I think there are jeans that kind of look sensible on me for a man of my age, but they look too baggy on me and daggy. Like when Obama wore all those jeans and he got paid out because they're all like, too floppy everywhere. I actually prefer tight jeans and tight black jeans, and I just think that's a little bit of the subconscious John Bon Jovi from my youth who, wore ridiculously tight jeans.
I've got a preference for tighter jeans now, I have to say. Like, although they're not as comfortable, they do look better.
Yeah, especially now you've got like a real firm butt and stuff from all your tennis.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course, yeah. I didn't want to say it, but...
What about you? Is there anyone, would you like to meet someone who's still alive? Neil Armstrong having departed, sadly.
Yeah, who would I be? I mean, if I'd be upset if you met a famous another moonwalker.
Is Buzz Aldrin still alive?
Yes, he is. Yes, at the time of recording. I've never met Ian Rush, who was a bit of a football hero of mine.
Yeah.
So if you said, "Oh, I bumped into Ian Rush and had dinner with him last night," I'd be pretty jealous.
That's cool. Yeah, he's a person I only know exists because I'm friends with you. Like a few of those Liverpool players. Yes. I would like to meet Dermot Brereton again, who was my favourite footballer when I was a kid. I met him at a footy clinic when I was a kid, but I'd like to bump into him again for nostalgic reasons. Paul Keating is a previous Prime Minister of Australia. I'd like to meet Paul Keating. I never met him. I had a signed poster that I'd sent off, and his PA very nicely got him to sign it and send it back.
Nice.
But I had that in the back of my door for many years, but I'd meet Paul Keating. Trying to think if there's a director, because I really love films.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet Wim Wenders, who's a really great filmmaker that I really love. Once upon a time, I was a massive fan of Quentin Tarantino, so it would be fun to meet Quentin Tarantino, but I'm not as big a fan of him anymore.
Yeah.
Would you like to meet Steven Spielberg? You used to love Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I'd be happy to meet him. Yeah, he'd be nice to meet. Yeah.
Oh, well, that sounds a bit, you're a bit the same as me. Not quite,
Yeah.
You wouldn't be infuriated if I met them. That's kind of the fun of this idea, I think. But
Yeah. There is a degree of like, oh, I can't believe you met them. Like, I'm the one who should be meeting them. That's the idea of this podcast. Yeah.
So let me just put it out there, man. Which one of us can be the first to meet Tom Hanks? Obviously, Tom is the ultimate. He's the king of the world, the king of the universe, king of the Unmade podcast. He's the only person on Twitter that we follow.
I'd like to meet him. He seems like a really charming, nice man, and he's he's entertained me a lot over the years. But if you met him, I'd be happy for you.
Oh, okay.
And he's not my hero. He's not a hero. Like he's not like he's just he's not like a.
He's just lovely, isn't he? But he's not got that. He's
just a nice man.
Is it that he's more than a nice man? He's a very nice man.
Would you rather meet Tom Hanks or John Williams, the composer?
Tom Hanks.
Right.
You're John Williams?
Nah, probably Tom Hanks because you got a bit more boast value.
But yeah, well, you can't. This is only the boasting against the other person, the person who you then go and talk to about it.
Would you rather meet Quentin Tarantino or Steven Spielberg?
That's a really good question. Once upon a time, it would be Tarantino. I was obsessed. I had him all over my wall and everything, all these films. I've really gone off him, even though I think he's become a better filmmaker. I've really gone off him a little bit, and I think I'd probably have a bit more respect for Spielberg. So I think I'd probably want to meet Steven Spielberg, to be honest.
Would you rather meet Paul Keating, the former Australian Prime Minister, who you're a bit of an admirer of, or Barack Obama?
I would rather meet Paul Keating. Paul Keating means more to me than Obama.
Yep.
Especially if Obama's wearing those jeans. Disappointing taste in jeans. That's tipped it for me, I'm afraid.
All right. Well, that was good fun. Thank you, sir. Did you have to do secret words today?
Oh, yes, I did. Hang on. Now, wait. Hang on. Let me look up my notes.
This is the traditional secret words from Tim's daughters that he's supposed to plant into the podcast and never remembers to do.
This is very, very subtle. One of them is because I don't know this word. So if I missed these, I'd be, up the river in a canoe without a paddle. But I would be then needing to make amends by getting a bunch of peony, which are a look of recognition,
Yes. And it's fun. It's very funny that you have chosen that word because that is a word that apparently we Australians pronounce incorrectly, and my wife never stops laughing at me for saying peonies.
Oh.
Apparently it's peony. Well, I don't think peony is not how you say it.
Oh, right. This is our daggy Australian way of saying it. Peony, mate.
Yeah, this is like, and that particular, there is no word that causes more amusement and mirth and jokes between us than that word. So I'm very familiar with peony.
Peony. How does it come up? How are you often sitting around talking about flowers? That in itself is a sign of the Englishness of your lovely wife.
They're quite a common flower, in the UK. It's just come up a few times, and ever since I said it, there's nothing my wife finds funnier than me mispronouncing words, particularly because of my Australianness.
Yes.
And that word is top of the list.
Yeah. Well, that's I've walked right into that one then. Did I go okay with canoe? Is there a particular English lady way of saying?
No, canoe. I think a canoe's a canoe.
Peony. It's not peony. It's peony.